of Orson Welles. Orson Welles was the young upstart, trying to compete with the big networks out there and the big shows that were gobbling up most of the audience. He realized that when he was doing his productions that he couldn't compete right off the top of the hour with these large, very popular shows like Edgar Bergen. So what he did is he crafted his weekly scripts. And they only had a week to do this, by the way. They're doing a show, an entire play every week on this Mercury live radio theater that they had. But he would craft his scripts so that at the first commercial break, at about 15 minutes after the top of the hour, when they would go to the Lux soap commercials, and they would cut away to some music from some ballroom and things like that while they get ready for the next part of the show, he would actually craft his scripts to be totally engrossing at that very point. So when people were spinning the dial, because that's what they did back in the old days, when a commercial came on, just like we used to do with the old television sets, we'd surf around, see if there's something else that was interesting. And they came across full-blown, right in the middle of the War of the Worlds, and the Martians were landing in upstate New York. So basically that happened. Now the coincidence is, I'll get to the bottom line real quick, the coincidence was that while the entire country was being pulled over to the Orson Welles broadcast because of the commercial break that happened on Edgar Bergen's show, Concrete, Washington, coincidentally, by the way, no one's ever really figured out why, the entire town suffered a power outage that turned everything off, lights, electricity, and it plunged the entire community, the mountain community of Concrete, Washington, into blackness, which totally panicked everyone, of course, in the local town. And everyone got on the phones, everyone did the telegraph thing, whatever they could do to find out what's really going on. And of course, everybody's, going crazy. We think we're being attacked out here in the state of Washington. Now, that got picked up by the AP UPI wire services immediately, went around the world and started the entire panic that supposedly happened during that broadcast because of what really weird things happened at the same time the broadcast was going on out here in the state of Washington.
Now, and the bottom line of that is you've got a small mountain community that goes completely black in the middle of they don't even get to hear that it was a story. They thought it was a news broadcast, breaking news. Martians have landed in New York. If you've ever heard of the actual Orson Welles broadcast, that's exactly how it starts.
And the reason is because Welles had crafted this script that he knew the commercial break was going to happen, and he knew exactly when people were going to turn into the show, and they did not hear the caveat at the very clear caveat at the beginning of the top of the hour.
Right.
Stage play, the whole thing. This is our weekly kind of broadcast that we do about some kind of historical book. They all missed that. Everyone missed that, and basically in the United States, because they're all listening to the popular show initially.
So the reason I'm bringing that up is because if you saw the Flatwoods episode of Blue Book and how they treated that woman and, a small community, and it's now on the news. Now the government's going to show up. Now J. Allen Hynek is there. They don't know who J. Allen Hynek is, but, they don't like the government to begin with back then. And here comes the government. They all have guns. They're all about to string this poor woman up because her kids saw a Martian in their eyes, and they couldn't find it, so she's making it up. So, I can see the small town community doing the exact same thing. That's just how small mountain communities are. And
I have a couple questions for the panel also when you get done, Eric.
Mm-hmm. But that's the bottom line, and that's why I brought that story up, because that story pretty much parallels close to the same, within 20 years of the Flatwood monster, and same mindset, same American mindset, and and then it progresses because out of I can't remember how many thousand cases Blue Book actually investigated, but there were 700 of them they couldn't identify.
Eric, I live in a small town as well of about 1,000 people, and the area where I live, they're about 10 minutes away, is another community of about 1,800 people here in British Columbia. And back in September of 1988, Miriam Delicato was abducted right out a mile outside our town. Right. And it is one of the, if you're into ufology, you know that it is one of the best recorded alien abduction stories. And what a lot of people in small towns like to do, especially in my town, there are a bunch of people who've been here 30, 40 years who do not want to talk about this subject because they think having their town associated with such an event that it embarrasses the community. It is something that is very, very antisocial. It is something that people will laugh at the community, and the people in there is a bunch of rednecks who don't know what the heck they are talking about and are just a bunch of yeehaws who probably smoke too much pot, drink too much, and have a bad dental plan. And that is very, very, telling of the public, because there have been people here who have lived here for 30, 40 years. They're like, oh, yeah, I have heard about that story, but I don't know anything about it. I don't know anything about it. And here I am saying, why don't you put a plaque up at the area where it happened? It's a great tourist attraction. Tourism brings money. But it's that small town attitude that does not allow people to think outside the box at what could bring more revenue. So, yes, I understand what you're saying about small community.
Well, and they don't want that kind of publicity. Now, we have the Eagle Fest. They want the tourism for eagles. They're a little more lenient towards Bigfoot. They would like the Bigfoot crowd. But when it comes to UFOs, when it comes to aliens, oh, no, that's taboo. That's just the sad reality. Now, Chris, you had a couple questions.
Yeah, just curious on how did this come about, the release of Blue Book? Who released this information to make this movie? And to the panel that's way more experienced than me, how do you think this is, because it's already airing, how is this currently affecting disclosure? Because my opinion is, for all the skeptics, there's your proof.
I think I'll address the second question, because the first part of it, I believe a lot of that was brought out through the Freedom of Information Act. Second part, I believe this is a part of the disclosure movement. Kind of a first kickoff of 2019, because like I've said in the show before, 2018 you saw the New York Times article, then you saw Tom DeLonge, you saw the Space Force comment, you saw a couple other, but I think this is kind of a part of the movement of the ones that want disclosure versus the part of the government that still doesn't want it and won't allow it to happen.
Right,
I will disagree with you on that one, Eric.
Okay.
I think that from what I know of UFO television, that is some of the highest rated programming on television is when you discuss UFOs. That's why the X-Files was so popular in its time slot for so long. That's why Star Trek was so popular even in reruns and the remakes and reeditions of the show to make it happen. I don't think for a second the public who is watching this, whether or not they believe in UFOs, will truly understand that this show is based on real cases. I really don't.
So I've got a question for you on that, Dave, because Star Trek is classified science fiction. X-Files, a lot of people saw that as science fiction, although we know most of the X-Files were based on fact in some form or fashion. I think society will accept it if it's in the science fiction genre, but look at Hangar 1. Hangar 1, which was a MUFON-based case file documentary type show. And I believe it was taken off the air. Was it not?
And now you've got Blue Book, which is factual with the documentation to back it. And then I don't know if you guys have seen it, but they also have what's that show? Area 51. Roswell. They have a show called Roswell, which I watched, which is completely like a soap opera. So now you have a factual against a soap opera that's on. So more confusion to the people.
Is Roswell that kind of a soap opera about the boy that's supposed to be an alien and his sister, and they crash on Earth and whatnot?
Yeah, it's two brothers and a sister that are aliens, and they do their powers and
that came out several years ago. It seems like it's making a comeback, but they stopped after I think season 3 on that one.
Yeah, they just stopped it. I mean, there's no information about Roswell per se, but it's just the aliens that lived in that town.
Right.
But like Dave said, some people aren't going to believe it, and then look what you've got. You've got a factual against a sitcom. So,
what's interesting is they're bringing Blue Book up kind of we know it's based on real files, but it's being brought up like X-Files.
Yeah.
Where you have characters and you're getting to know the characters and kind of another drama
instead of a documentary. Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
So maybe that's the way they're presenting it, so it doesn't get taken off the air.
I'll tell you an interesting story. A couple of years ago on Spaced Out Radio, I had a gentleman named Rob Mercer, who runs MVUFOs, which is Miami Valley UFO Society out of Ohio. So one day he goes to a garage sale that he finds on Craigslist, and he's always looking for neat stuff. He picks up this box that has a bunch of documents in it. So he says, how much for this box? And it's like $5 or whatever it is. So he paid the $5, looks inside the box, and there were files upon files of released documentation of Project Blue Book, unclassified or declassified material. Mm-hmm. I actually, after I interviewed him, he actually sent me some of these documents and photographs that have been unclassified that I have sitting on my desk right in front of me right now from Project Blue Book.
That was like the find of a century, huh?
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Including I have in my hand right now the government's UFO analysis sheet, which has date, location, date, time, group. Was there any photos, physical specimens, source? Was it military or civilian? What type of observation? The length of observation, number of objects, the course they were flying. Was there satellites in orbit at that time? Astronomical phenomena? Was it a meteor, star, or planet? Was it an aircraft, a balloon? Insufficient data? Others, including reflection, inversion present, photo analysis, sundog, lenticular cloud, or physical specimen analysis. Then a brief summary of the sighting, an actual sheet here of their report, and actually I got two of them, and their case categories. But I actually have two photos of UFOs that were unclassified by Project Blue Book. I'm holding them right now. One is numbered 51, one is numbered 186. Both numbers are drawn on pencil on the background, and they are from the Foreign Technology Division